Listen to your favorite shows live and on demand 24/7. Download the 77 WABC mobile app now. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. And this is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group. Here's Dick Morris on 77 WABC.
I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
We have confused the idea that to achieve safety, you put more cops on the street.
Oh, yes, they would lie to you, and they do. All the time. This is James Flippin filling in the Dick Morris Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Dick has this Sunday off. Our phone lines open, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. You can follow me on X at XJamesFlippin. You can follow me on Instagram, Flippin' Out Radio. And again, we're taking your calls today, 1-800-848-9222. So who lies to you? Who's lying? Well, the deep state, the government, the media, American universities, Hollywood, your so-called elected officials, they lie to you constantly. Look across the pond right now at everything that's happening in the United Kingdom. Tragic story this week. Horrific stabbing. And since then, protests have been raging. People have been taken to the streets, angry about the United Kingdom government's immigration policies. And just like the summer of George Floyd here in these United States, there are consequences for telling a population certain things. Like telling an entire population and mandating that they believe in the concept that cops are evil and racist across the board. Just like the situation now in the United Kingdom. For 15 years or more in Great Britain, they've had unchecked immigration. Sounds a lot like what we've got going on in here in the United States right now. But there in the UK, they said, all good. No problem. Don't be so xenophobic. But there are problems when it comes to unchecked immigration. And let me tell you something. As far as that stabbing in England this week that killed 3 little kids at a dance recital, authorities have refused to talk about motive. Won't do it. Won't mention it. Can't be determined. Well, let me tell you something. The more authorities refuse to talk about motive in certain cases, the more that they say, oh, it's under investigation, trying to figure it out, the more it's generally speaking whatever right-wing people say it is. You saw it in the Nashville shooter, where the shooter identified as transgender and was anti-Christian. You saw it with the gay club shooter in Orlando years ago, who turned out to be a violent Muslim. And guess what? The stabber in England this week that's touched off the protests and the riots and all the chaos over there, the guy didn't do it because he hates Taylor Swift, okay? Taylor Swift's music was not the reason why this guy stabbed little kids. But officially, we don't know, right? Sounds a lot like a horrific terrorist attack that targeted the most innocent amongst us. But officially, we don't know. And it's just like the media will tell you. There's no problem with Kamala Harris. I mean, she's such a liar. She constantly tries to change the past in terms of what she was involved in, what she said, what the policies that she embraced were, the administrations she was a part of. She lies about that all the time. And that's a problem. But the media will tell you it's not. She and all the people in the national, various large newspaper, TV channel, news organizations, they're trying to make you forget things. Like the fact that Kamala Harris, the leading now official nominee for president amongst the Democrats, was the border czar. It happened. It was a politically sort of expedient move for the Biden White House because they didn't want to take the blame. Here's Kamala, vice president. What is a vice president, though? It has to do with the campaign, and that's pretty much it. And they're like, well, Kamala's here. Give her the border. Give her the border. What's the worst that could happen? Well, guess what? Now she's running for president. So does she like the border policy? Is Kamala a supporter of what the White House has been doing for years here? She doesn't want to be considered the border czar. Why not? And you know what's fascinating? Kamala's a liar about so many different things. I know it's hard. I know there's so much that's happened over the course of former President Trump's time being on the political scene and dominating the political scene. But remember Russiagate? The whole concept that the only reason he was president the first time around was some grand plot from Moscow and the KGB infiltrated the voting machines and all this kind of stuff. A bunch of crap. But this is a woman, Kamala Harris. She's been a senator, a top prosecutor, now vice president. You'd think she'd have access to dirt and reports and stuff about Russia, right? Well, here's an appearance that she had with Stephen Colbert, the late night propagandist. And it was from 2018. Let's take a listen.
Their investigation that concluded in their official report, the majority report, the Republican report, saying no collusion.
Right.
Where are you guys?
Our investigation is still open, and we will go wherever the facts take us.
Okay. So are there things you know? Hold on.
Oh, yay! Yay!
Are there things that you know that you can't tell us?
Yes.
That you'd like to tell us?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All of the above is true.
Are they good?
Okay, so that was from 2018. And even worse so than now, nobody knew who Kamala Harris was back then. Nobody had a clue who Kamala Harris was. I mean, I guess if you lived in California, maybe you pay a little bit of attention, you know who your senators are. But she was on with Stephen Colbert trying to raise her profile. So just like her fellow California Congress member, Adam Schiff, she joined a lie. An outright lie to advance her candidacy and advance her buzz. There was never any truth to any of the Russia allegations. It was made up by the Hillary campaign to try to smear Trump and make him look bad. Now, we can leave aside the fact that it actually led to a real federal investigation, which is a disgrace. But here's Kamala running with the political lie. No problem. Just like she's doing now in terms of being less than honest, less than truthful. Because, and look, this is not my game. This whole identity politic thing is not my game. But let's just call her ambiguously person of color Kamala. Again, I don't care. What used to be progressive when I was in middle school in the 90s was to say race is an irrelevant factor. Not important. Not important. You judge somebody based on if they're a good person, how they make you feel, if you enjoy spending time with them, if it's a place of business, are they good at their job? All that kind of stuff. But that's not the way the left looks at the issue. They pretty much make it the biggest deal ever. And they don't want Kamala to run on her background. They don't want to run on her as a cop, as a prosecutor. That whole thing's sticky. They certainly don't want to connect her to the Biden administration with all the disasters that they've had for the last 4 years. So what are you supposed to do? Well, Kamala's a woman, and she's black. That's basically the extent of her candidacy. If you were able to pin down amongst various focus groups and political operatives and say, well, what does this woman have going for her? Yeah, some people would say vice president, former senator, top prosecutor. Those are all bona fides. But the Democrats don't want to run on that. They don't want to focus on that. So they make it a big, big deal that she's supposedly an, African-American woman, right? That's what it means to be black. She's tough on crime. Well, voters don't want that. Okay, that highlights the absurdity of our prosecutors. Well, let's see. And you know what else? You know what else Kamala's lied about? How about President Biden? I mean, I know we don't talk about the guy anymore, but he's still president. And did you see when he was welcoming home the hostages, that late night landing after the Russian hostage deal? President Biden tried to walk up the steps to get on the plane. He wasn't going anywhere, but he didn't know that. The plane had landed, dropped off the hostages, and then Biden's trying to, I guess I got to go up this plane, huh? No, Joe, no. No, you're not flying. But you know what? People are knowing. They're noticing this kind of stuff. There's a poll out. 92% of Americans believe there was a cover-up concerning Joe Biden's health condition. That's from YouGov. A Biden cover-up. And the poll said that amongst the people who believe there was a cover-up, 54%, 92% believe that Harris knew about it. So over half say there was a cover-up about Biden's health. And 92% of those respondents that say there was a cover-up say Kamala knew about it. So let's just take a step back. Lies about the border, check. Lies about Trump, check. Sleight of hand regarding her whole identity politic, check. Which, again, doesn't matter, but it's their whole campaign, so we have to pay attention to it. They aren't running on her accomplishments. They're not running on the Biden administration's accomplishments. They want to run away from all of that. So what's the left's big attack strategy now? What are they going with these days? If they're not going to talk about, the current administration, if they're not going to talk about what Kamala's accomplished, what are they going to do? Let's see. What are they going with these days? This. So boring. I mean, we've been doing this one for years now, like a decade, if not longer. But we'll tell you all about it when we come back. Donald Trump is a racist. Right. Okay. We're going to do that one again. We'll talk about it. James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris on this Sunday. This program sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
It's the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group on 77 WABC.
James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris on this Sunday, August 4th, noon, 19 minutes past the hour and 31 seconds. So the phone lines are open, 1-800-848-9222. We were just saying that if you're not going to run on the White House administration's accomplishments, if you're going to stay away from whatever Kamala Harris's background is as a top prosecutor, and supposedly the borders are, even though they say she's not, then what are you going to do? Well, you're going to attack former President Trump. So what's the left's big attack strategy now? Yes, right. You've heard it before. Former President Trump is a racist. And this week, he was at the National Association of Black Journalists event in Chicago, where Trump was on stage being asked a series of questions about certain things he said in the past, including whatever, some people suggesting that Kamala Harris may be a DEI hire.
Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words.
then. Would you
God, she's so rude.
Yeah.
This reporter is so rude.
Sir, I'm asking you a question.
Sir,
Define
it for me if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman.
I respect
she went to a historically black college.
I respect either one.
You know what's so fascinating about this? The whole thing just flips the campaign on its head. It flips the Harris campaign on its head. So you say, it's racist for Trump to say that. How dare he say that? Doesn't he realize she has a Jamaican-American father and her mother is Indian-American? Okay. All right. That's great. But when you talk about supposedly her being a black woman, you're suggesting that she's African-American. Okay. Now, again, like I said, this is not my game, but she's a chameleon. When she was running for Senate, she was Indian-American. Now that her whole campaign needs to focus on that, she's an African-American woman. That's the difference when running for, I guess, vice president or president. There's so much stuff that Kamala cannot be pinned down on because nobody wants to focus on that from the left. She's pro-Israel, right? No. Well, wait. No, she's pro-Palestine. Well, she's open borders. No, she wasn't the borders are. She wants to defund the police. But wait, she made her career as a prosecutor. Again, I don't care about race. I think it's totally irrelevant. But all Trump did here was note that she's a chameleon. There's a term called code switching. It's when you sort of change your pattern of speech or way of being depending on the types of people that you're around. Well, did you happen to hear Kamala this week at one of her rallies? I mean, let's take a listen to what she was doing there at that rally.
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024. Yes, we will.
I mean, how pathetic is that? What was that? She doesn't have an accent like that. She never had an accent. Diego, can you play that again?
And you all helped us win in 2020, and we're going to do it again in 2024.
2024.
Yes, we will.
I mean, that's just online with, like, Hillary saying, I ain't tired. I ain't so ever tired. And another thing that I noticed, by the way, in that cut where that reporter was asking Trump at the National Association of Black Journalists, she said, DEI hire, suggesting that Kamala Harris is a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language? What? I mean, the right-leaning person certainly doesn't use the term diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what do you mean acceptable language? That's a pet project of the left. Do you know what I wish that former President Trump had said in that moment? What, do you not like DEI hires? Don't you like DEI programs? I thought we liked DEI programs. Rob Smith is an online commentator. He made a video describing this phenomenon amongst American politicians. And Rob Smith, a black American man himself, much more qualified to speak on this kind of thing, he sort of broke down this tendency for politicians to code switch.
See, that, friends, is what we call the black scent, and that is the old country black scent. That is the black scent that all of these politicians bring out every 4 years when they want to go talk to the black folks. And they need to know the black folks, you know, they need to talk to them with the old Southern dialect. You know, when they talk to the black folks, they need to know that they ain't in no ways tired.
Absolutely. Again, Rob Smith on his Twitter account. Kamala Harris's campaign hosted 2 fundraising events this week that were created for white people only. First, there was a White Women for Kamala Zoom call last week on this day. And then a day after, Monday, they had a White Dudes for Harris call. How exactly does that help with like a colorblind society? In what way is that progressive? You're stratifying Zoom calls based on race? 1-800-848-9222. Sticking with the theme, Diego, let's get this one ready. Here's Michaela Montgomery. Michaela Montgomery. She's an American black woman from Atlanta, and she participated at Trump's Georgia rally this weekend.
They don't want to talk policy. They just want to use propaganda to steal your vote. The left is trying to tout this woman as a savior for the black community, but all she's done is hurt the black community since she came into the game. step in destroying the black community is to dismantle the black family. So aside from her record as a prosecutor, why don't we ask Mrs. Willie Brown if Kamala Harris cares about black families?
Oh! Yeah, ouch. Ouch. 29-year-old Kamala Harris, I don't know how many people know this, had a well-known affair with a married 60-year-old Willie Brown, the former mayor of San Francisco, which, by the way, whatever, you have an affair, marriages fall apart all the time, no big deal. However, that led to Kamala's big break. She got her place in politics because of connections to Willie Brown. Just saying. Hate the player, don't hate the game, but I'm just saying. That's how it went down. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Joe is on Long Island, and he's going to chat with us now. What's up, Joe?
Hi. I just wanted to discuss Kamala Harris's atrocious record, not only prosecuting innocent people, but fighting tooth and nail to keep them locked up, even if their convictions were overturned and they were exonerated. One of the cases, when she was a San Francisco attorney general, she had someone arrested by the name of Jamal Trulove for murder, despite the fact that there was zero physical evidence linking him to the crime. She bribed a witness to testify against him. She refused to turn over exculpatory evidence. She even had some of it destroyed. She lied to the jury when she told them that the witness feared for her life. Then when he was sentenced to 50 years, she sat in court laughing. And then there's another case, Jose Diaz, who was convicted of sexual assault, had the conviction overturned on appeal. She fought tooth and nail to keep him locked up. She fought tooth and nail to block compensation from being paid to him. And she even tried to get him to re-register as a sex offender. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, one of these people, Jamal Trulove, is speaking out.
You know what, Joe? First of all, let me just stop you right there because you've said a lot, and good call. The details of all this are important, relevant. I would suggest people take the time and look into Kamala's background as a prosecutor. But what's the most telling thing about what you just said? Lives destroyed. People left in her wake. Her work as a prosecutor was focused on advancement, not justice. Now, look, you could probably make that same criticism of a lot of prosecutors across the country. People that are so focused on getting that next mayor position or becoming a senator or becoming a vice president, whatever it may be. But Kamala just does what's politically expedient. Kamala says, if it's there, if I can lie about it, if I can misrepresent the situation and make myself look good, that's what I'm going to do. Nick is with us, and he's going to join now. Nick, what's going on?
Hi there.
What's up, Nick?
Question. I'm a Trump supporter. Why did he last night at the rally in Atlanta attack Governor Kemp? Makes no sense. He needs all Governor Kemp's supporters to win that state.
Yeah, you know what, Nick? The whole Georgia thing's a little bit strange because you would think that Governor Kemp would be a political alley for Trump there in a key swing state of Georgia. But if you think back to all the stuff that went down in the investigation into alleged voter fraud in 2020, Kemp was not a strong ally. And I think what Trump is working here is kind of the long game. At this point, with all the destructive policies the left has put in place over the last 4 years, and with the terrible palace coup they carried out, getting rid of Biden and installing Kamala as the nominee, it's going to be really hard for the Democrats to pull this one off this time. Of course, it's going to be close. Of course, we're talking about tens of thousands of votes in key districts in places like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia. And that's where you make a good point. But just because somebody's got an R next to their name doesn't necessarily make somebody an ally of Trump. Just like somebody being an attorney general doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good person or that they're scrupulous or that they wouldn't do something bad to get ahead. Have you heard the leading candidate to be Kamala's vice presidential nominee? If you believe this video that leaked on Friday, it's already a deal. It's already a wrap. It's going to be Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. But do you know about this odd case that's connected to Josh Shapiro? The murder of Ellen Ray Greenberg. Or was it a suicide? First it was ruled a murder. Then it was ruled a suicide. 2011. And then Attorney General Josh Shapiro's office was connected to that. There's a lot more to it. James Flippin in for Dick Morris, the show sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
This is 77 WABC, and this is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group.
1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. We're going to pick up the pieces here and move along and move and groove like an average white band. James Flippin in for Dick Morris on this Sunday, August 4th. And we've been talking a lot about Kamala Harris. We'll talk about Josh Shapiro. Is he going to be the VP nominee? It looks like it, but there's still also Governor Waltz, waltzing Matilda. There is Mark Kelly, the senator out of Arizona, their potential possibilities. And don't forget, we're going to talk about J.D. Vance today. Now, Lizzie Rattoballi of WABC News is going to join me to help me understand this eyeliner, guyliner, makeup controversy surrounding J.D. Vance. Now, I am a supporter of J.D. Vance. So, Lizzie, we don't have to do it right now. You can come into the studio and do it when we actually do it for real. But have you been looking into this whole controversy?
I've been deep in it online. I mean, Reddit is really hot with comments. You know, people have a lot of takes on this.
People suggesting that J.D. Vance uses makeup, in essence.
Basically, yeah.
All right. So we'll talk about that. We'll do that in a little bit. Thank you, Lizzie.
Of course.
Lizzie will be back to talk about that. But for now, we're going to talk to you, like Mark in Hackensack. Mark, what's up?
Hello, James. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Mark.
Terrific. Point I'd like to make, all right, the emphasis on the registration. Bottom line is nobody's getting any new voters. I'm voting Republican. The other side is voting Democrat. We have to discuss voter registration and the importance of it.
Okay.
Even Lara, when she's on the morning show with Sid, she doesn't bring the emphasis of that on and how to go about it. Find out if you're still registered.
Who doesn't bring the urgency about that? I didn't catch that. I'm sorry. Say that again, Mark.
My apologies. Find out if you're still registered. In other words, if you have a change of address, you have to deal with your county, your borough. I'm from New Jersey. With me, it would be the county.
Right.
You have to make sure you're registered. Comes November 7th, you can't just pull a lever, the proverbial lever. It's really a button. And we want to vote early. And we cannot vote early if we're not registered. So for new voters, even in your 30s and 40s, they have to register. There's no emphasis with all of the I'm going to call you DJs, okay? VJs, voice jockeys.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I guess we do play some music, but, it's not really, I wouldn't necessarily say DJ. But thank you, Mark. That's certainly important. Yes. Everybody should be registered to vote. Are you registered to vote, Diego?
I am registered to vote. However, I did change boroughs, so I'm going to have to triple check that I'm all set there.
So you're registered to vote in New York?
I am registered to vote in New York.
Not in Michigan?
Not in Michigan.
Let's
I'm registered to vote in New York.
I may or may not want you voting in Michigan. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I see how it is.
All right. Eduardo is joining us from Tampa. Eduardo in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Eduardo. Uh-oh. Did we lose you, Eduardo? That's all right. We tried. He was there. He wasn't. He's not there. It's okay. It happens. Yeah. So look, I mean, everybody should be registered to vote. I think there was a call there that wanted to talk about Venezuela. We could do that if you want to. Whatever's on your mind. 848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. But we said we were going to talk about Josh Shapiro. Now, there's no set in stone thing here that Josh Shapiro is going to be the VP nominee for Harris. But there's a lot of smoke and a lot of reasons why that would be the case. First of all, and this is pretty much the most important thing if you're a member of the Democratic Party, Shapiro's from Pennsylvania. And he won a statewide election in Pennsylvania. Big-time swing state. You want to talk about the caller who had thoughts on Georgia. You want to talk about Arizona, Mark Kelly. You want to talk about Michigan. You want to talk about Wisconsin. These are big-time swing states. So it stands to reason that it would make sense to get a guy like Shapiro in the race. Now, a guy like J.D. Vance, nominated on the Republican side, he speaks to some of those populism trends, author of Hillbilly Elegy, those central Pennsylvania districts that are sometimes associated with the Rust Belt. A guy like J.D. Vance makes some inroads there, potentially. So you try to offset that with a Josh Shapiro. But the biggest factor in terms of electoral politics that I think is at play here for a guy like Josh Shapiro, he's Jewish. He served in the IDF. And right now, the Democrats are trying to thread a needle with the Israeli thing, with the Israel-Palestine conflict. Now, there's a lot of people on the left, the political left, who find themselves more sympathetic to the, say, Palestinian cause, maybe. The term genocide gets thrown around, all that kind of stuff. But there's people on the right who don't necessarily feel super great about all the money that's spent on Israel, as opposed to, say, things in the United States. But for sure, the bigger problem in terms of that whole sticky debate and making it work politically is amongst Democrats. You saw it this past spring with the college campuses and the young youth vote that's all into the struggle, really, really going hard on the anti-Israel side. Yet, there's a lot of Jewish voters who support Israel who are Democrats. So how do you play that game? Well, Vice President Kamala Harris, can sort of be the attack dog and try to win Dearborn, Michigan, and say Israel's problematic and we don't like Bibi Netanyahu and all this kind of stuff. And, let's get a ceasefire, stop bombing kids, all that kind of stuff. Kamala can do that. And then Shapiro can kind of set the liberal Jewish people at ease. That's the playbook anyway. That's what they're going to try to do. But it goes deeper than that. I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of research about this. Josh Shapiro is a very, very, very flawed candidate. And it's because of all the skeletons in his closet. Let me get this up here. There's so much reporting on this. Nobody's talking about it amongst mainstream media outlets because they're trying to figure out, is Josh Shapiro going to be the vice presidential nominee? Because if he is, we don't want to talk about this kind of stuff. Ellen Ray Greenberg, an American woman who died after sustaining 20 stab wounds in Philadelphia. Now, originally, her death was ruled a suicide. Stabbed 20 times. Some of them in her back, in the back of her head. There were actually a couple of wounds that were originally ruled to be post-mortem. So how would that be a suicide? Well, that's a good question to ask Josh Shapiro. Because he was the attorney general at the time when this crime took place. Now, if you talk to the family of Ellen Ray Greenberg, all they want is for the case to be reopened. They want the case reopened. And there's a connection between Josh Shapiro and this woman who was killed, her fiancé. It says here that the uncle of her fiancé, James Schwartzman, was making some phone calls after this murder or suicide took place, and that she was contacting lawyers, contacting apartment building officials. So what's the connection? Josh Shapiro went to school with Kimberly Schwartzman, who is the daughter of that guy, James Schwartzman, making all those phone calls after that issue took place. Because, of course, you know, the fiancé supposedly found this woman's body, Ellen Ray Greenberg. Now, I'm not qualified to be an investigative reporter on this. I don't have enough time in the limited, brief radio program we have here to do a deep dive like a documentary would on a suspicious killing like that. But do you think it's worth asking Josh Shapiro? How is that a suicide? 20 stab wounds? It's not just that, by the way. There's this whole sexual harassment case connecting back to Shapiro in the sense that there was a man kept on staff within Josh Shapiro's office who was accused of sexual harassment. And then despite being accused of sexual harassment, he was kept on staff. Again, just questions to ask. How about East Palestine? Do you remember that? East Palestine, the train that derailed, the Norfolk Southern train that derailed carrying hazardous material. That was back on February 3rd of 2023. On February 5th, 2 days later, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro signed off on plans to burn the chemicals. They did a so-called controlled burn. Then the next day, crews released vinyl chloride into trenches dug around the derailment. They ignited it. February 15th, East Palestine held a town hall to address the concerns of citizens. Norfolk Southern backed out. And what was Governor Josh Shapiro doing at that time after he'd signed off on the controlled burn? Oh, he went to the Super Bowl. Isn't that fun? The Philadelphia Eagles were in the Super Bowl. They lost, by the way. But Josh Shapiro was there. Oh, he just had to take it all in. The Keystone State, baby. Go Birds. While people were breathing in hazardous vinyl chloride and just the absolute chaos that was associated with that East Palestine train derailment. But he was having a good time. Going to the Super Bowl. Isn't that nice? So anyway, we'll see if, in fact, it turns out to be Josh Shapiro as the choice for Kamala's vice presidential nominee. But if you believe the leaked video on Friday, makes a lot of sense with needing to win Pennsylvania, that whole thing. There are those other options, though. Governor Walz of Minnesota, Senator Mark Kelly, Arizona. We shall see in which direction Kamala goes. Larry is in Brooklyn. How you doing, Larry?
Okay, good. I want to make the point about the about them calling Trump a racist. Excuse me. I'd like to know how a person is not a racist if they're biracial and they're not more than 50% of one race, and they identify with only one race and subordinate the other race, like she's doing.
Well, but Larry, to be fair, I don't know that that's exactly what Kamala's doing. I think that if you were to pin her down right now, she would say how, with a beaming smile, how proud she is to be biracial and that she's both Indian American and also Jamaican American or Black American, whatever term you want to use. If you put the screws to her right at that moment, she might be happy to say, I'm both. But I think the key is, depending on the circumstances, she choose to play one up versus playing up the other. And what I'm saying is, I just think it highlights the absurdity of all this identity politics stuff. How about just focusing on the fact that she's an American? Right? I mean, what's the big deal with why does race have to be? Thank you, Larry, for the call, by the way. I appreciate it. But why is race such a big deal? Why do we focus on it so much? Well, in this case, it's because they certainly don't want to talk about the Biden White House and what they've done, jacking up inflation, opening up the border, causing chaos on the international order, growing the federal largesse. They don't want to talk about all that. So they say, well, here's Kamala. She's a black woman. And then they just let it hang there. because that's really all she has going for her as a candidate as far as the left is concerned. They don't want to talk about her time as a prosecutor. They don't want to talk about her time as vice president. Her borders are, that's for sure. So what else do they have to talk about? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. So when we get back, let's talk about this a little bit, because at the top of the hour, we'll get Lizzie from WABC News, Lizzie Rattoballi, to join and share some of her findings here. Is J.D. Vance androgynous? Does J.D. Vance wear makeup? I couldn't believe the one thing that she told me that people are saying J.D. might stand for. Juicy drag queen? My, oh my. I mean, this is a down-home man from Ohio. This is a good old boy from Kentucky. Is he wearing eyeliner? I refuse to believe it. But if he is, that's certainly fine. 1-800-848-9222. Maybe to get in the spirit, I'll take out I bought this from a local drugstore. I think they call this a compact. Is that right? I'll just kind of put on a little eyeliner here. Try to get my inner J.D. Vance going a little bit. James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris, as sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
This is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group on 77 WABC.
I'm still, you're stuck with me as president for a while, kid. There's no way out, okay? You got me for at least another 100 or 90 days or so.
Yikes. That was President Biden, to the extent that he's still president, on the tarmac after welcoming home the hostages following that prisoner swap with Russia this week. We had Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich freed, former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, a Russian-American journalist with Radio Free Europe, also a green card holder. And as Biden and Kamala Harris were there to welcome home the prisoners, the freed captives, Biden sort of milled about and also was, within earshot of reporters who shouted some questions and did that whole chestnut. So, Diego, can we hear that again, what it was that Biden said?
I'm still, you're stuck with me as president for a while, kid. There's no way out, okay? You got me for at least another 100 or 90 days or so.
There's no way out. Horrifying. By the way, do you think he's saying that like to himself? Almost like he knows there's no way out? My wife's forcing me to do this. No joke. I just want to go home. There's no way out. Or is he sort of taunting the fact that he knows the administration's not going to use the 25th Amendment to get this guy out? Because that would just be such a political nightmare. There's no way out. And then he says, you've got me for another 100 days. And we are, I think, at 92 days until the election. But he's still president after the election, unless then he's going to step down. He's got to pardon Hunter at some point. So he's got to get the pardon in, then he can dip, give it up to Kamala. But of course, I mean, the expectation is that he's going to make it to Inauguration Day, right? Tommy is in Howard Beach. Tom, talk to me.
Hey, Mr. Flippin, thank you for taking my call.
Pleasure's
I have a
mine.
question for you. Maybe you can help me. I have two brothers in their 70s. I'm 65. One's all the way to the left. One's a moderate. I'm conservative.
Mm-hmm.
They visited me. We were talking about the upcoming election, and I said I think the Democrats are going to win because I thought they stole the last one and they're going to do it again. My brother that's the leftist got up. He stormed out of my house, and he said that I was stupid and that I wasn't entitled. I'm entitled to my own opinion, but I'm not entitled to my own facts. And I was wondering, am I stupid?
Well, certainly, Tommy, you're listening to this program, so you're not stupid. You're an enlightened gentleman. You're a man of culture. You're a man of substance. So, I mean, that goes without saying. But I would ask you this. Do you think he got so twisted up because you were saying maybe you're worried about election integrity or, whatever? Is that the thing that he got so bent out of shape about?
He just gets bent out of shape with all the issues to the left. He just gets so excited. And I'm like, If there's a good idea on the left, I want to be able to say, hey, that's a good idea. But he's so one way.
Here's the thing, Tommy. You make a fascinating point, and thank you for the call. You're certainly not stupid. Keep listening. But here's the thing. 92 days until the election. So much at stake for people like us that pay such close attention to this, right? We feel a certain type of way. We're really passionate about our politics. But what do you get out of arguing with people these days? I think that the best you can do is you try to listen, and if you hear a point where you feel you can make some observation or some little nugget that might resonate with them, then maybe you throw it out there. But the people that are really dyed in the wool with their politics and stuff, what does it accomplish at this point? You really think you're going to change people's minds? To me, when former President Trump talks about fight, 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 it's certainly not about anything physical or violent or even really getting into debates with people that might feel differently than you. It's about maintaining your core beliefs, sticking true to what you think is important. Maybe you don't like the fact that the border's wide open. Maybe you think that's a bad policy, even if you're pro, say, legal immigration. Maybe you think it's crazy to defund the police in large municipalities where violent crime is a reality. That's okay. You're allowed to feel that way. Maybe you feel that things like drag queen story time for little kids are bad. And you might think drag queen story time for adults is totally fine. That's okay. But when it comes to fight, 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 you're standing by your beliefs. And you're going to get out there in November. You're going to cast your vote. And if you know people that feel the same way you do, say, hey, don't forget, you're supposed to vote on Tuesday. But for the most part, whether it's family, whether it's friends, somebody you see at the store, whatever it may be, I don't know how much you're going to change people's minds at this point. You know what the truth is? The last 4 years, the way things have culturally and politically swung way far over to the left on a lot of issues, that changes people's minds on its own. There's a lot of people who don't necessarily like the way things are going right now. And they're going to go out there and they're going to vote. And the arguments you have with your brothers, the disagreements you have with your neighbor, the thing on Facebook or X or Instagram, whatever it may be, not going to change a whole lot. But all you can do is stand by your beliefs. All you can do is say, you know what? I know who I'm voting in November. James Flippin in for Dick Morris on this show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
It's Sunday, and you know what that means. And this is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group. Here's Dick Morris on 77 WABC.
Oh, yes. James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris here on the program, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. So, good old J.D. Vance. We're going to talk about him here in a second because Lizzie Rattoballi from WABC News has been doing some digging on this whole eyeliner controversy. But first of all, let me just make a reference to something that Lizzie was doing in her news. Lindsey Graham, the South Carolina senator.
You couldn't let it go.
Yeah, he's got some big problem with the prisoner swap. Shut up, Lindsey Graham. Okay? I mean, this is a guy who never, ever saw a peaceful thing that he didn't have a problem with, that he didn't hate. Oh, no, we freed a jailed journalist, a jailed former Marine. Oh, I'm going to complain about that. Oh, why? Because we had to give out to get. Of course. Well, you know what?
He would call us sunset ugly.
He would. And you know what? That's just fine. That's just fine. So here in hour two, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. We're going to do a lot of local stuff. I need to get some things off my chest regarding NJ Transit. We've got this report where Mayor Adams and his campaign are in some trouble potentially for some campaign contributions that were made. And outdoor dining. That whole thing's still ongoing. I've got some thoughts on that. But Lizzie Rattoballi from WABC News is here. And Lizzie, why don't you give kind of the background on this whole eyeliner controversy for J.D. Vance, if you would.
Well, some would call it guyliner, actually. That's what everyone is really calling it. It actually started with Aaron Rupar on Twitter. He's
super far left Twitter guy.
Famous for just like clipping videos of Trump together. And he actually posted a screen cap of J.D. Vance on a news network. And he said, J.D. Vance's eyeliner is getting more prominent with every TV hit. And that sort of started this firestorm of people being like, is he wearing eyeliner? Is that natural? Is he born with it? Is it Maybelline?
Is it Maybelline? Nice. Well done there. Now, as a member of the fairer sex, you can help me to understand this, because I don't know a thing or two about makeup. The only thing I've ever applied to my face, well, I shouldn't say that. When I was involved with the Artie Lang show on DirecTV, they would sometimes put the makeup on our face to like kill the shine.
Oh, the powder.
Yeah, too much shine on the face, right? So they don't want that with the overhead lighting and all that kind of stuff. And then when I played football and baseball, I would use eye black. So I think that kind of, in a way, is almost like a makeup type thing. It's functional.
It's
but
functional.
It is kind of like a makeup. So tell me, with this eyeliner, we're not talking about mascara. That's the lashes.
That's the extends the lashes, but
we're not talking about eye shade.
No,
that's the really colorful stuff that goes like underneath.
Well, that's concealer. Underneath,
that's concealer.
Concealer goes underneath. You're thinking of eyeshadow. That goes on top. That's the pop of color that people usually have.
So what's eyeliner?
So eyeliner usually also like a pop of. It gives your eyes like a little more life, like kind of like mascara.
So it's like framing the eye.
Yes, framing the eyes. So. In a way, you could argue that is also functional. Like you want to bring attention to the eyes, but
and for the most part, we associate this with like rock stars, right?
Yeah, and a lot of
like a Johnny Depp
or like a punk sort of like a Pete Wentz, Fall Out Boy sort of deal. They would wear a lot of guyliner.
Now, it occurs to me that the whole weird era and the whole like J.D. Vance's weird thing has kind of taken a little bit of a step back in recent days because we had the Trump at the NABJ and, all the controversy that surrounded his comments there. But would it be fair to call the use of eyeliner amongst guys weird or not necessarily?
I mean, I'm
going to put the left in a pretzel right now.
Yes, it is like now we're kind of getting into like the bullying territory and just like breaking down his physical appearance. I mean, so makeup, that could very well be useful for men. I mean, like concealer we mentioned before, you want to put that under your eyes to make yourself look strong, not exhausted. You're full of life. You're a lively leader. I mean,
and TV people use it all the time.
I
can't even watch like late night TV or any of these talking head TV shows. If you ever look at the person's neck,
completely different
it's
shade.
It's a struggle because their neck is like white and then their face is orange and their neck is all wrinkly, but their face is all smooth. It's a lot.
I'm so happy we work in radio. That's all I'm saying. I'm so happy we work in radio. But yeah, I mean, it could be helpful for men. I mean, and also there have been a lot of questions about plastic surgery in men and politicians, especially. I mean,
look at President Biden.
Many a facelift.
How many facelifts did he have? Multiple.
I know, and dating
Nancy
back.
Pelosi.
John Kerry, even a lot of the Botox,
100%. Looking weird with the Botox. Yeah,
exactly. So we've always kind of looked at people's appearances and raised these sort of questions, but. Some defenses for Vance, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
Some men do have darkly lined eyes.
Just kind of naturally.
Right? Like I think of Billy Zane. Billy Zane has those dark eyes, or even a Drake. Drake has.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I don't know if you'd want to be associated with Drake right now with all the rap beef. But it could be just like double lashes is what they call it.
Well, Kendrick Lamar, I think, was on stage for Kamala earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion.
Yeah,
was there no Kendrick Lamar thing as well?
I'm not sure if Kendrick was there.
Okay, because maybe Drake will come out on the other side, and that would be pretty fascinating.
that would be really interesting.
All right.
And he also lost a lot of weight, though, J.D. Vance, recently, so could be his eyes are more hooded. There's a lot of questions. Like, we're not really clear if he is wearing eyeliner, but, I mean, people are questioning because, he's made a lot of comments about women specifically recently, the crazy cat lady. It's like, is he buying the same products as them? Is he shopping in the same makeup section?
All right. Well, you know what? That's a fair question. We're trying to get to the bottom of it. Lizzie Rattoballi, thank you very much. Really appreciate your digging into this story. And we'll have to keep up on this. We'll have to see if... Now, you told me there was also an online makeup tutorial where you can do your makeup like people say J.D. Vance does.
Exactly. A drag queen actually took it upon themselves to make themselves up just like J.D. Vance. And I was honestly shocked. It was kind of uncanny.
All right. Well, that's all right. Okay. We'll have to look for that video.
Surreal stuff.
Lizzie Rattoballi doing the news here at the top of the hour and also doing reports for us throughout. And I believe you'll be in Chicago later this month.
Yes.
Covering the DNC.
Yeah,
for WABC.
We're going across the aisle. You know, we gotta work both sides.
Yeah. And get a little chance. Have you been to Chicago before?
I've never been to Chicago.
Oh, enjoy it.
First
it's awesome.
time. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's a great city. Have a great time there.
Thank you so much.
All right. There goes Lizzie. And
thank you.
She's going to be there in Chicago. So, look, you have to think about this when it comes to J.D. Vance. Does he use guy liner? I certainly don't think so. But if he does, who cares? Look good, feel good, play good. That's what I like to say. We're out of the weird era. They tried to call him weird. But this is a guy who's an attorney, a graduate of Yale University, a graduate of Ohio State, a Kentucky and Ohio guy, former Marine, fought in Iraq, a father, a family man, a husband. Is he androgynous? Well, just watch out. Somebody might sign him up for women's boxing. We'll talk about that whole controversy later. It's not a transgender thing, by the way. I'll at least say that. It is pretty complicated, though. It's just, you know, it's still relevant to the sports debate, whether or not the boxer from Algeria should or shouldn't be fighting against women. We can ask that question. 1-800-848-9222. James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris. When we get back, let's hit up the phones. People want to talk about Kamala. They want to talk about Biden and DEI and Josh Shapiro. Is he going to be the nominee for vice president? Wouldn't that be interesting? James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
This is 77 WABC, and this is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group.
Money, 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 must be funny in the rich man's world. Money, 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 always sunny in the rich man's world.
James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris here on this Sunday, August 4th. Money, money, money. Eric Adams' campaign being looked at sideways. The city watchdog looking at the 2021 campaign for Mayor Eric Adams and suggesting that there may have been some rules that weren't followed concerning campaign fundraising. Now, this could mean that the Adams campaign has to surrender some of the funds that have been raised. In November, we'll be a year away from the election for mayor. Brad Lander, the city comptroller, just threw his hat in the ring. You figure that Andrew Cuomo is looming as a possibility. Scott Stringer, former comptroller, I think he's going to get in there. And, of course, our own Curtis Sliwa on the Republican side, planning to run for mayor. But isn't it interesting how much controversy and how much question has surrounded Adams' campaign fundraising? And furthermore, are you aware of the fact that so much of this controversy centers on the fact that Adams uses campaign matching funds from taxpayers? It's a thing they have in New York. If certain donations are made under a certain amount, then you get matching funds from taxpayers. And can I just ask, why do we do that? Why are we spending taxpayer dollars on campaigns? The whole thing is it's supposed to make it more fair. It's supposed to make it more fair. Like, oh, well, rather than some rich person just coming along and giving millions of dollars and buying the race and influence that way, and we're going to use tiny donations and match it with the taxpayer. But the taxpayers are spending taxes to have things like roads fixed and bridges and schools run and fire and police and all that kind of stuff. it's not for political campaigns. It's a disgrace. Dom is in Minnesota, and he's going to chat with us now. Dominic, how are you doing?
Yeah, hey, James, thanks for taking my call. First of all, J.D. Vance should come back with why he wears an eye shade, because that's the only way he can clearly visualize all Democrats because of the 50 Shades of Gray, metaphorically speaking.
No, wait a second. I'm going to try to unpack this now. You're saying that J.D. Vance does wear eyeliner, and you're making a joke about 50 Shades of Gray as well, the book, movie?
That's because that's how we can visualize Democrats.
All right. Okay.
No, but here the reason I called was Republicans are not the race baiters. I'm a conservative, full disclosure. Conservatives are all about merit. It's Joe Biden, a Democrat that was friends with Robert Byrd of the KKK. It was Joe Biden, a Democrat, who said you can't work in a 7-Eleven unless you have a slight Indian accent, and I am of Indian origin. I think Trump has the right approach to walk into the lion's den and respond directly to any gotcha questions like the one asked by that first quote-unquote journalist. And a critical question Trump should raise the next chance he gets is to ask the interviewer, Joe Biden said he was going to pardon Hunter. Let's see what he does in 90 days. Then you and I can talk about how bad I am for the country.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point, Dom. Thank you for the call. Appreciate hearing from you in Minnesota, of course, a swing state. And you said a lot there. You unpacked a ton in terms of merit versus checking a box, DEI versus accomplishment, virtue versus virtue signaling, all that stuff. And yeah, look, I couldn't care less about Kamala's identity politics game. If that's the way the left thinks they're going to win, then that's what they're going to do. But you just want to call out the chameleon nature of politicians, because if there's anything that makes a politician especially bad, and they're all pretty much bad, if there's anything that makes them especially bad, it's when they're just total shapeshifters. And we know that right now, the whole Kamala campaign is to say she's a black woman and she gets you. She understands you because of that whole thing. But this is a cut that's been making the rounds on social media. Just kind of fascinating. Kamala with Mindy Kaling, who was on The Office and some other shows. Kamala was doing a cooking segment with the actress.
Okay, so what we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian, but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people we're related already, so this is perfect. It's basically true.
So look, good for her, right? Kamala Harris is, I guess, in some ways biracial or of a mixed identity politic background. Nothing wrong with that. The whole thing is that she chooses, depending on her surroundings, which one to focus on. So the people like me who say, well, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to know what your policies are and what kind of person are you and this, that, the other. That's what matters. She's trying to obfuscate all of that. Well, don't pay attention to my record as a prosecutor. The borders are, forget that. That wasn't even really a thing. But I am a person of color. Okay. So the games that are played with this whole identity politic from the left are just silly and pointless and useless and even worse. Dean is in the Garden State. How you doing, Dean?
Wonderful, James. I love what you're doing. You seem to be very comfortable now. In the beginning, you sounded like a news guy. Now you sound like you're into it. That's great.
You know what? I'm trying to grow into the hosting chair a little bit here, Dean. I think I had the swimmies on when I was first getting out into the water, and now it's a little bit more of an embrace of the op-ed aspect of this. I can flex my opinion a little bit more here, Dean. So yes, thank you for noticing.
Oh, no problem. We're getting to know you. That's really nice. I wanted to talk about that the black journalist event that Trump went to
in Chicago, the NABJ. Yes.
Yeah, and the reporter says define DEI, and she says she didn't define it. She stated the acronym, what it's for: diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Correct.
The definition would be an example like, supposing I'm getting a job and my aide is going to be, I'm going to pick a black woman. That's pretty much the definition, or a very good example of DEI.
Right.
So the answer to that would be yes. She's a DEI appointment when I do it. So when Biden said, I'm going to pick a black woman for my vice president, that's the very definition of DEI.
You're absolutely right, Dean. And that's the thing. Nobody on the left seems to be talking about this the right way, right? If you heard that cut from the woman at the NABJ where she said, former President Trump, people in your party are trying to suggest that Kamala Harris is a DEI hire. Would you push back against that language? Language? DEI is supposedly some pet project of the American left. It's about kind of taking affirmative action to the next level and saying that you're going up against institutionalized racism by trying to advance, I guess, what you could call quotas and stuff like that. Or if you don't like the term quota, more equitable distribution of backgrounds and all this kind of stuff. You could use any flowery language you want to. But the whole point is it's advancing people's position, their higher ability, their status through those identity politic things. So if you say that calling someone a DEI hire is like a bad word or an insult or something like that, then you're just insulting the program. You're just calling out the fact that the program is unfair, silly, trite, backwards, antiquated, whatever you want to say. Because the truth is, anytime that you're deciding to hire somebody for a position or promote them as a candidate or list somebody's great attributes, and it's something other than real virtuous things, then it's pointless and it's prejudiced. And it's a bad thing. That's why so many people don't like DEI programs. Of course, you'll hear various people say, oh, it puts people at risk. It means that the right people aren't being hired for jobs. And I think that's legitimate. I do. But just on its face, the concept of promoting somebody to the position of vice president just because she's a woman, or just because she's an Indian American, or just because she's a black American, is the opposite of virtuous. So that's where a lot of people have a problem with that kind of thing. And frankly, I think they're right. Elena is calling from Staten Island. Hi, Elena.
Hi, James. Just one point about that. You would think all Americans would be against DEI because they would be put in a position that if they were applying for a job, they would be looked over for somebody who met the DEI profile. So how could the left embrace it? But the reason I call is somebody who is considered as a vice president pick paid $295,000 of Pennsylvania state money to hush a story about a sexual harassment case in the DA's office. Was it the governor's office or the DA's office?
That's a good question. I think it was the attorney general, but it might actually, you know what? At this point, it probably is the governor's office, because when was he elected? I think he would have been governor at that point, because this goes back to just like 2023, I believe.
But look at the outrage. Oh, that's right. That's right. Look at the outrage. $295,000 of state funds. This discussion will be a J.D. Vance coup. He would be all over this. So as much as we're covering it, I think what's going to happen is she's going to change her mind.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point, Elena. I just want to throw it out there that in no way, I think at this point, I was anticipating, having known that I was going to fill in this afternoon, that we'd have known by now that it was going to be Josh Shapiro.
That's right.
The fact that we don't makes me think they're possibly having second thoughts. So it could end up being waltzing Governor Waltz. It could end up being Senator Kelly, who invested in a Chinese spy balloon company, apparently. But I just think that they want somebody from Pennsylvania desperately. I also think that they desperately need somebody who's going to help them thread the needle on the Israel-Palestine thing. Anyway.
But where does he stand about Israel? I mean, I know he was part of the IDF.
It doesn't even matter. You're right, Elena, but that's the thing. Good call. It doesn't matter. They're going to try to play the same game that they always play. Frankly, both sides do this. And you want to talk about the $253 million, whatever insane amount of money it is that's paid out from the office Shapiro is associated with at that point to satisfy the sexual harassment claims. How about the fact that the U.S. Senate supposedly has a slush fund to pay off sexual harassment claims from people on both sides of the aisle? Talk about a disgrace. That's what we have a slush fund for? So when it comes to DEI programs and, trying to figure out which one of the vice presidential picks is right and all this kind of stuff, some of that's playing in because, like I said, the Democrats need to figure out a way to answer the whole controversy over Israel and try to satisfy their voting base. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. But it's a game that they're trying to play right now. Lou is in White Plains, and he wants to join this discussion. How you doing, Lou?
Hey, how are you, James? If I could, I didn't get a chance to tell the screener, but if I could, I want to touch on Kamala quickly and make one quick point on Shapiro. Full disclosure, conservative, but to have some credibility, I want to be fair. And so talk about navigating the biracial situation for Kamala. It's a very awkward situation in this point here is that when she's in front of an Indian crowd, how can I say this? They may not be totally receptive to the other half of her ethnicity and vice versa. So it's not maybe in her best interest to kind of focus, it's in her best interest to focus on whatever ethnic, audience.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing, Lou, and your point's well taken in the sense that a lot of the time, the more you get into things of identity politic, the more you're actually fostering any sort of disagreement that might exist between demographic groups, right? So in some ways, that's kind of the game the Democrats are trying to play. Republicans are racist. Democrats are progressive and super open-minded and fair about race and stuff like that. But yeah, your point's well taken. And I think that it's playing itself out, especially, and Lou, thanks for the call, with the whole Israel-Palestine thing. I said as soon as that happened, and October 7th, horrific, absolutely a tragedy, the kind of thing that makes you pause and say, wow, I don't even want to do the news today or whatever. But I immediately thought to myself, this is a problem for the Democrats. Because it went back to before the pandemic when they had Hasidic individuals being knocked out in a whole knockout game out in Brooklyn. And you heard a lot of those same rumblings, that kind of anti-Semitic, we don't like landlords and we don't like rich people and all this kind of stuff. That was starting to bobble up back then. And you had the whole BDS movement, boycott, divest, and the fact that Mayor de Blasio, when he was trying to run for president, tried to straddle that line. It's an issue for Democrats. There is no consensus on either side of the political aisle, I'll have you know, about Israel, about Ukraine and Russia. There's disagreement on that. But when it comes to the left's base and the need that they have to have that youth vote come out and support them, Israel-Palestine's a big problem. It's still why I think Josh Shapiro will end up being the pick. But that's why you have to ask, what happened with Ellen Greenberg? Stabbed 20 times. Why was it called a suicide? Why was there millions and millions of dollars spent out for that sexual harassment case? Why did you decide to do a controlled burn in East Palestine and then jet off to the Super Bowl? Why? And then you can ask him more traditionally, how does your position differ from Kamala Harris's when it comes to Israel? Because both sides of the aisle try to play this game where they say, oh, well, we're super critical of, the people are being too aggressive with their response to this with military. But then the money continues to flow. All the money continues to flow. There's one thing you can count on when it comes to Congress. They're going to spend the money. That much you can be assured of. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Speaking of spending money, once upon a time, Governor Phil Murphy vowed to fix NJ Transit. He said he'd do it if it kills him. Governor Murphy, thankfully, still standing, still with us. But you know what is not fixed? NJ Transit. That's for darn sure. As a matter of fact, it's as much of a disgrace as it always was, and potentially even worse. This past week, more nightmares. More nightmares. A group of people that were stuck in a train underneath one of the tunnels for like an hour, 2 hours. Air conditioning cut out, lights cut out, people stripping off clothes, heat stroke. What are we doing here, guys? This is 1800s technology we're talking about. Trains. And do you know all the money that goes into this? Do you know all the money that goes into NJ Transit?
This is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group on 77 WABC.
Driving that train, pound cocaine. Casey Jones, you bet. Watch your speed. Trouble ahead, trouble behind. And you know that notion just crossed my mind.
James Flippin filling in for Dick Morris here on the Dick Morris Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Let me ask you something. Could anybody be a bigger failure fraud than Governor Phil Murphy when it comes to the tough talk he had once upon a time about NJ Transit? Just going to let that hang there. Because there is nobody who could be worse. You know what Phil Murphy is? He's a friend. A friend to unions. A friend to government jobs. Is he a friend to the common New Jerseyan? No. Because all that he can say, the only thing he'll ever do regarding what's going on with NJ Transit these days is say, it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Well, you know what the truth is? The more people say things are unacceptable and they say it over and over and over again, they're saying it is acceptable. It's acceptable. This is a cut from 6 years ago. 6 years ago. We are coming up on the end of the Governor Murphy term. He's term limited. So he is not going to be governor any longer beyond this next election. But this was from 6 years ago when Murphy sat down with CBS.
It won't be, overnight. It won't be a miracle overnight. But sooner than later, folks will say, you know what? Things have changed at NJ Transit. I'd say NJ Transit has had three issues. Number one, leadership, and we immediately tried to correct that. And I think we're off to a very good start. We've got a terrific Department of Transportation Commissioner who's the chair of the NJ Transit Board, Diane Scacchetti.
Oh, she's great.
New executive director from the private sector, Kevin Corbett.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah. Diane Gutierrez Scacchetti and Kevin Corbett. You know who I haven't heard from during all this summer of just nightmarish, horrific breakdowns for NJ Transit? Diane Gutierrez Scacchetti. And actually, I had to look it up. I didn't even know this. But Diane Gutierrez Scacchetti isn't even the DOT commissioner anymore. No. She's actually just about to step down as Murphy's chief of staff. So, who is the Department of Transportation Secretary? Well, back in January, Governor Phil Murphy tapped Francis K. O'Connor as the new New Jersey Department of Transportation Commissioner. He's still awaiting confirmation, by the way. Over the course of my life, we've had some awful governors in New Jersey. And it's only fair to say that spans the political aisle. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. Christy Todd Whitman, Republican, John Corzine, Democrat. Chris Christie, Republican. Phil Murphy, Democrat. Just more of the same. Now, Christie, I have a recollection of the fact that he tried to go after the state pension and rein in some of the costs associated with that and all this kind of stuff. But he also killed the ARC deal that would have built a new tunnel for NJ Transit. Now, I've mentioned this before with Phil Murphy, who I think it was originally said by 2050, and then he moved it up to 2035. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels in the Garden State. All right, that's ambitious. Get rid of fossil fuels. But I've never heard them say we're going to modernize the signal system for NJ Transit and move away from these overhead wires that sag and fall and break in high heat. I've never heard him say we're going to move away from that. That's weird. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels on which, like, basically the world's economy is centered, but we can't get away from this old hanging wire system. And why is that, by the way? Well, it's because Amtrak maintains the tracks, and Amtrak only exists as a means to advance union jobs and waste government money. That's literally the only reason that Amtrak exists. Throughout its existence since the 1970s, I think it was, it's never turned a profit. It's never not lost money, I should say. And there's a tiny little route up from Boston down to D.C. and back. They call it the Northeast Corridor. That's the only useful stretch of train that exists for Amtrak. But why is it a government entity? I mean, we have airlines. Airlines are private businesses. Why is Amtrak a government business? We actually use trains in certain places. Like I said, Boston, D.C., up and down the coast, New York for sure. And yet these government entities that manage these transportation entities regionally, talk about the MTA, talk about NJ Transit, they're a disaster. An outright disaster. And potentially that's just going to get worse as you have more people working remote, not going into the office every day. The economy of scale doesn't really work for these transit agencies anymore. But have we heard from Governor Murphy recently? I know he was on vacation. We were waiting for him to come back from vacation to name whoever Bob Menendez's replacement's going to be as he goes down in flames, a disgrace. But Governor Murphy, any thoughts on NJ Transit lately? It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Here's a thought, New Jersey, just something to keep in mind. Maybe let's try someone other than a super rich hedge fund manager who's actually not even from New Jersey and buys the job. Let's try somebody else next time. John Corzine, Phil Murphy, rich guys from Wall Street who decide, it'd be fun to be governor. That sounds good. Maybe we should actually try to hire somebody for the job that knows a thing or two about New Jersey, cares about the common New Jerseyan, maybe even rode New Jersey Transit once or twice. Just a thought. Just an idea. Pamela is calling from New Jersey. Pamela, that's one of my favorite names. It's my mom's name.
Oh.
So
Really? Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I have a harsh last name, so my mom wanted a softer first name.
Now, do you go by Pam or do you actually go by Pamela?
Well, that's interesting. You should ask that. My family members usually call me Pammy. And if I don't use 3 syllables on the phone when I'm on a device or something, a lot of times people don't hear the name.
Yep.
Or lately, they've been calling me Kamala, God forbid. And
Kamala from New Jersey is with us now. Kamala.
They replaced the P with other sounds.
So, Pammy, what's on your mind today?
You know, I was thinking about if J.D. Vance uses eyeliner, it could be because of his wife being Indian, because in Hindu, men, it's like in other cultures, they wear eyeliner to ward off the evil eye.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Is that sort of like in line with the use of temple dust and stuff like that? I mean, again, I'm showing my ignorance here, but is that a similar thing?
They say it goes back to, Egypt started this. And in fact, one day I was in a drugstore and an Arabic man asked me, could I help him find the eyeliner for his wife?
Wow.
And of course, we know in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, it's very common. And they said they even use it in Indian to ward off the evil curse of jealousy. So I'm wonder if he's doing it because of all the stuff they've been saying about him, and he's just, if he is wearing it, he's just, picked up on it with the Indian culture.
Yep. You know what? It's a good call, Pam. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, maybe so. Maybe a down-home boy from Ohio spent his summers in Kentucky with his family, wanted to be closer to his wife and her upbringing and her culture, and he said, I'm going to put on this eyeliner here and do like a good American. That's the J.D. Vance that I know, ladies and gentlemen. 1-800-848-9222. Let's try Eduardo again. We had a tough time connecting with him earlier down in Tampa, but I think our long-distance connection is back up. Eduardo, speak to me.
Yeah, James, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, we're dodging this big storm over here, but let me get straight to my two things I want to talk about, and that is Venezuela. We're going to see an upsurge in migration up north here, and Doug Emmerich, this was in Daily Mail and New York Times, had a relationship with the first wife babysitter. That's pretty significant. That's going to be coming out this week.
Yeah, I saw that story where I guess this was before Emhoff and Harris got married, right? He was in an affair with his previous wife or whatever. He was previously married, I guess, and he hooked up with the babysitter, right?
Right, and he got her pregnant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I don't know that and thank you for the call, Eduardo. I appreciate it. I'm not so sure that that's a politically significant story. I mean, I get it. Like, once upon a time, that would seem like a really juicy headline that the potential first gentleman was previously in an affair but I mean, come on. And I'm as big a MAGA supporter as you've seen, but are we really going to get into like past relationships and if you cheated on your wife and all this kind of stuff? I mean, that's not. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing the forest for the trees here with this Doug Emhoff story. I'm just not necessarily seeing that as a super big point of focus. David is in the Garden State. Hey, Dave.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I wanted to say to you that while I agree with your assessment about People's Republic of New Jersey elected governors over 40 years being disasters, the last one was reelected in 85. And he left the state in relatively good shape. What do you
mean? What do you mean reelected? Murphy's a two-term governor.
Well, I'm talking about a governor who actually did their job and left the state in relatively good condition.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you're talking about like going back to like Tom Keene or something like that.
Yeah, perfect together. Be that as it may, I have to defend the gun grabber Chris Christie on one thing. Okay. When he canceled the ARC, that was considered the largest public works program in the country. The problem was, and Paul Molshine in the Red Star Ledger can give you more detail than I can, but the public works program was dead ending. So it wasn't even ARC was not going from Penn Station to Grand Central. It was dead ending in Penn Station. And then the train would go in reverse. And the problem was the whole bridges and approachways to the Hudson on the PRNJ side were strictly paid by New Jersey taxpayers. In my estimation, I don't really defend Christie that often because there's not much to defend. But in this instance, he had no choice but to cancel the ARC. It was a boondoggle.
No, but here's where I disagree with you on this one, David, because once upon a time when I was less informed on this story, I would have been right there with you. And I would have said, right on, Dave, you're absolutely right. But here's the thing. First of all, it wasn't entirely going to be paid for by the New Jersey taxpayer. New Jersey taxpayers were picking up more of the tab. But did you know, which I did not know until I looked further into it and was told about this, that it was strictly a New Jersey Transit tunnel. So it was not going to be used by Amtrak or any of the different, freight lines that might need to come through or anything like that. It was strictly a New Jersey Transit station and tunnel.
To go into New York City is strictly a New Jersey Transit station. In my estimation, that's shafting New Jersey even more.
Well, what do you mean? I don't understand. So you're saying it because it didn't continue on to Grand Central, it was useless?
If it's going to go to Penn Station and dead end, I still think that both sides of the Hudson should pay for it. And if need be, Congress, well, they've messed things up anyway.
But Dave, come on. But let's be real about this. How many people are commuting on a daily basis from Manhattan into New Jersey and back? I know it's a thing. It happens. People do it. But, that's not the bulk of the people using New Jersey Transit. It's most people that leave somewhere in New Jersey, go to New York, and then they go back home to the suburbs to live at night.
You got me there. Only drug dealers living on the west side commute in New Jersey. But the reality is the taxpayers of New Jersey are paying far above and beyond.
You're right.
Add in this community suggestion taxation nonsense. New Jersey commuters are getting shafted.
Dave, you know what? You're making a good point about the New Jersey taxpayer holding the bag. And if I was somebody that didn't commute into New York every day and use New Jersey Transit, I'd probably be even more foot-touched about the concept of having to pay taxpayer dollars to build that tunnel. But you know what? All the stupid stuff the taxpayer dollars are spent on, we're talking about a functioning, useful tunnel, a railway tunnel into New York City when you live in New Jersey. One of the main reasons that you actually spend the money that it takes to live in New Jersey is because New York's right here. Whether it's the entertainment capital aspect of it, whether it's the ability to go visit family and friends who live there, whether it's the jobs that are available here in New York, in some way, shape, and form, it all goes downstream, and that's the reason that you live here. As kind of scary as that is to say for a lot of people who get bent out of shape about stuff to do with New York. But that's the whole thing. It's all centered on that. So what better use of taxpayer dollars would there have been 20 some odd years ago when we've frittered it away on who knows what since then to actually get a functioning tunnel? But Chris Christie wanted to run for president. So he had to be seen as a budget hawk, as a deficit hawk, as somebody who's really on top of it here, folks. And so he threw the people in New Jersey under the bus so that he could raise his national profile. That's all. Just like he did with Bridgegate, by the way. Except it failed. 1-800-848-9222. James Flippin in for Dick Morris on this Sunday program. We're sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Still got some time here to take some phone calls. Also, I just got to mention, this guy Kyle Rittenhouse? Remember him? What a joke. What a disgrace. This is a guy who grifted off the MAGA movement, made all these millions of, who knows, got media appearances, all this kind of stuff. No, he shouldn't have gone to prison for what he did in Waukesha. That was not, should have been acquitted, yes. But then you come out and say, well, we'll talk about it when we come back. James Flippin in for Dick Morris here on the show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
This is 77 WABC, and this is the Dick Morris Show, presented by the Patriot Gold Group.
I raised my right arm and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight."
Fight, 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 fight. James Flippin in for Dick Morris on this Sunday. 92 days to go until the election. And, I hear from a lot of different people saying, I don't like what Trump's doing with this thing, with his campaign, and why didn't he say this, and he should be changing this and doing that. And you know what? Time to come together. Time to decide what side you're on. You don't have to love everything about former President Trump. You can take issue with things that he does, but you know what? Just wait. This election is the most important thing right now. Not nitpicking his position on this or saying, why isn't he running this kind of campaign? Worrying about Operation 2025 or whatever stuff you've got cooked up for his next agenda that you think is important. You know what the most important thing is right now? To actually win the election. That's what matters. So when former President Trump goes out there at the NABJ and he faces the lion's den and he takes tough questions and he's responding and fighting on behalf of the America First movement, it's incumbent on you to support him. And if there's aspects of his administration or policy positions that you're kind of worried about, guess what? Come middle of November, that's when you can start to lean on that. That's when we can take your phone calls here and say, all right, what do you think should happen next? But for now, the focus is on the election. Yesterday, here in New York City, was the deadline for outdoor dining permits. And what had to happen was restaurants had to submit an application to be able to still have outdoor dining post-COVID.
I'm happy they're going away. That's blocking up the traffic. It's a reminder of like a bad time. And
I want to get rid of them, all of them, because they make congestion. There is no need for them, and COVID's over. It's been over.
The ones that were put together better, more aesthetically pleasing, I think were better than the ones that just kind of fell apart.
There are ones that are crumbling. I think that there needs to be inspections just like there are in any kind of building situation.
The rats and the cockroaches love it.
The rats are on our street, coming out from underneath them.
I've seen rats go in and out, and I think it's gross.
If you walk around the city early enough, it's where you see all the homeless and the junkies shooting up, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, this whole outdoor dining thing, enough, okay? This is New York City. We're not some Paris tree-lined street where you're going to have all these little beautiful outdoor cafes and the ability for people to sit there. Stop. That's not what the city is. And there's areas where they've made attempts to have pedestrian plazas and the ability to have more of that outdoor experience and stuff like that. But come on. If you're not the type of place that normally has outdoor eating, time to move on. It's 2024, okay? It was done out of necessity. It was done out of necessity. Time to move on. Russ is in White Plains. Hey, Russ.
Oh, hi. Hey, James. You know, you have the same name as the late afternoon host. Can we call you Jim or Flip, or what did they call you on the high school football team?
Yeah, well, I was known as Flip more often than not. You could call me Flip.
Is it all right? We're kind of on the same team here.
You could call me Flip if you like to. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Flip. And and do you have an Instagram? Because the early afternoon host seems to admire your butch presentation and everything. I mean, you were on a New Jersey high school football team, right?
I do have Instagram. Yes, it's Flippin' Out Radio. That's Flippin' Out Radio. But Russ, make your point quick. We're almost out of time.
Real quick, I think Biden undermined Harris from the beginning. He put her on the border so she'd fail, and he said, I'm going to put a black woman, and then he puts her to undermine her.
Absolutely. You got it, Russ. That's a great point. Here, Kamala Harris was made into the border czar so that she could fight the conditions along the border. But what did she do? Absolutely nothing. She said, well, I haven't even really been there, but I mean, I haven't been to Europe either. Ha ha ha. Kamala Harris is an absolute disaster. It's incumbent on you to fight. James Flippin in for Dick Morris on this, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group program.